Ladies and gentlemen, get the book Dr. Joshua Bowen wrote, The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. It is extremely full of knowledge and information for anyone, as well as join the Patreon. There's hundreds of videos that have been not released to the internet. You can ask questions and I will record them with these scholars in high definition. I do that all the time. You can also personal message me and you help the community grow. Thanks a lot. Dr. Joshua Bowen, once again, the expert, Ben Lamoureux, and he has a statement, not so much a question, but maybe you can delve it, you'll get the gist. Chattel slavery means that one person has total ownership of another. Literally nothing about the word chattel requires large-scale plantations. And we have plenty of evidence that chattel slavery existed in ancient Israel. This is not remotely disputed in scholarship. Now that sounds to me, he's talking about fundamentalists, or at least evangelical fundamentalists that are trying to ignore or say, no, chattel slavery is not there. But please, wherever you think this statement leads you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Christian apologists all the time will make the argument that, I mean, if you turn on any major apologist talking about this, even ones that I think are better than others, will say, well, it was indentured servitude, right? Mm-hmm. And I know I talk about this a lot, but like, there's no question, Ben's absolutely right, there's no question that chattel slavery, whether it's an evangelical scholar or a liberal scholar, they're going to say very clearly that, if they're a biblical scholar, they're going to say that chattel slavery is in the legal sections of the biblical text. And like, the one place that you can see it most clearly is in Leviticus 25, 44 to 46, and that's where they will go, mm-hmm. right? So Richard Averbeck, I think this is the behind the scenes in the Old Testament. This is put together, like John Walton is one of the editors, but Averbeck, I think this is the volume he did it in. Where are we? I don't know if I should be looking this up while we're here live, but I just wanted to read, Richard Averbeck, 423. He did the section on slavery. So, chattel slavery, it's the name of the section. As noted above, we cannot always tell from the ancient Near Eastern sources whether a person was a debt slave or a chattel slave, or had some other status in the household context. In ancient Israel, chattel slaves could be gained through purchase from the nations around them, from the resident aliens who lived among them, and as prisoners of war or warfare refugees. Israelite families could pass them down from generation to generation, Leviticus 25, 44 to 46, and Deuteronomy 21, 10 and 14. I mean, it's like, as Ben said, it's not disputed.
Right.
And Richard Averbeck is an evangelical Christian. Teaches at Trinity Seminary. I mean, it's not.
Maybe we should just ask the simple question in light of this: what is chattel slavery? Yeah. Because when you throw words around, especially for someone who doesn't know, sure. They might go chattel slavery, indentured servitude, same thing, no difference, and they don't really know what is a chattel slave.
Yeah. So, a debt slave is someone who is a slave, and that slavery is, their slave status is just contingent upon their debt being repaid. So if they repay the debt, they're no longer a slave. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Sometimes that can be time, right? Like you work for me for 7 years, that is your debt.
That's right.
Being paid off.
Yeah. So the reason that that time is put in place, and I think we've talked about this in other places, but the reason that time is there, both in the Hebrew Bible and in like the laws of Hammurabi, is that, if I owe you $100 and I can't repay it and I become your debt slave, well, theoretically, as soon as I pay you back the $100, I'm out, right? The problem is I'm not working anywhere else if I'm your slave.
Right.
So, all right, you say, all right, you make $10 a day. And I go, cool, so 10 days, I'll be out of here. And you go, but your room and board costs you $12 a day. I mean, like,
yeah.
So if there's not a regulation on that sort of thing, the interest, additional fees for things that the master is doing, like it can either keep you there for a very long period of time or just indefinitely. So But debt slaves technically are those that their debt is the thing that keeps them a slave or gets them released. Chattel slavery is just slavery that is not contingent upon a debt. So if they are property. I mean, there's no question about that. They're considered property. Unfortunately, I think what we sometimes mistake is that property means you can do absolutely anything to them. And that's not really the case.
Not in the literal sense.
Yeah.
But you point out in your book.
Yeah. I mean, they can be bought, they can be sold. Like
they can be beaten.
Yes, they can be beaten.
That's what I mean. Like there's some ugly stuff to this.
Absolutely. But in the antebellum South, and we've talked about this in other places, but in the antebellum South, there were chattel slaves. They weren't legally allowed to do whatever they wanted to them. They couldn't abuse them, which sounds crazy given what we know. But the law said they weren't allowed to be abused, outright abused. They could be beaten, but they didn't consider that to be abuse. If you beat someone above moderate correction, then that was abuse. And you couldn't murder them, right? But the problem, of course, is how do you regulate that? Like, how do you actually put that into practice? And the same is true in the Hebrew Bible. Now, what's interesting is there are some scholars that will argue that the laws that you see in Exodus 21, most of them only apply to debt slaves. And I think that for the most part, 20 to 21, that is about debt slaves. And somebody like Sam Gringus would say that chattel slavery, there aren't laws that protect the slave, right?
As if you could do anything to them.
Yeah, there aren't stipulated restrictions. Now, I'd have to think about that some more and see what he's arguing. But the point is that it seems like chattel slavery doesn't automatically mean that you could outright abuse them or murder them or burn them or whatever you wanted. It was their slavery is not contingent upon the repayment of a debt.
One thing ending on this topic, and I think we touched on this last time, but either way, I think this is great points. Going back to what I read today in your book, as I finally was getting to the end of it in the Audible. Thank God for Seth. God? Interesting.
Thank the cosmos.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'll thank whatever for Seth. Thank you for reading that. It was a wonderful read. However, you mention oftentimes, and you do it such in a polite way, but what apologists will do is they kind of reverse that and they'll use those defensible areas where it's look, you can't look, see, it's trying to protect, and we talked about that. It looks like a good law, trying to say they're on this equal playing field as a free person in the way that you're supposed to treat them. But no, it's not like that. They are a different level. And you when you did it in your book, the way you did it, I couldn't try and do it right now, but because I don't remember all the details. But you point out in one of the contexts where it's clearly, I remember. The bull, if a bull kills another person or something like that, obviously a free person, then you are to be put to death if you knew the bull has done this before. It's been a common thing and you didn't make sure that bull did not get free or whatever.
That's right.
Whereas a slave, just pay 30 shekels or whatever, silver or whatever it might be. That's a big difference, of human life and non.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not that 30 shekels is a small amount of money, because it definitely isn't. It's probably 3 years worth of work, right? But this is sort of the point that a slave cost probably 30 shekels of silver. So it's being treated under property law. It's not being treated under family law. And so I think that's, as you say, it's an important thing to recognize that people, I think, have this idea, and I'm sorry about the twins.
No, you're fine.
If you can hear them on the video. But, people, I think, have this idea that everybody is treated exactly, everybody's valued exactly the same because there are calls for justice, for example. Well, justice in the ancient world didn't mean everybody gets treated the same. What justice meant was everybody gets treated according to their status. In other words, you can't treat a free person lower than the status of free, and you can't treat a slave lower than the status of a slave. You have to treat them commensurate with their rank, right? You can't do less. That's what justice is it's trying to establish. So quite often what you'll see is if a citizen falls into debt slavery, justice is, bringing about non-oppression of that person. And so it often means after a period of time or, once in the king's reign or something, he'll just declare freedom to everyone. So now the free person who is, under debt servitude or whatever, it gets released back to a free status, loan is repaid. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.